أسس أساس الظلم والجور عليكم، وأبرأ إلى الله وإلى رسوله ممن أسس أساس ذلك وبنى عليه بنيانا وجرى في ظلمه وجوره عليكم وعلى أشياعكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم، وأتقرب إلى الله ثم إليكم بموالاتكم وموالاة وليكم والبراءة من أعدائكم والناصبين لكم الحرب، وبالبراءة من أشياعهم وأتباعهم. إني سلم لمن سالمكم، وحرب لمن حاربكم، وولي لمن والاكم، وعدو لمن عاداكم. فأسأل الله الذي أكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم، ورزقني البراءة من أعدائكم، أن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة، وأن يثبت لي عندكم قدم صدق في الدنيا والآخرة. وأسأله أن يبلغني المقام المحمود لكم عند الله، وأن يرزقني طلب الثاني مع إمام هدى ظاهر ناطق بالحق منكم. وأسأل الله بحقكم وبالشأن الذي لكم عنده أن يعطيني بمصابي بكم أفضل ما يعطي مصابا بمصيبته، مصيبة ما أعظمها وأعظم رزيتها في الإسلام وفي جميع السماوات والأرض. اللهم اجعلني في مقامي هذا ممن تناله منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد، ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إن هذا يوم تبركت به بنو أمية وابن آكلة الأكباد اللعين ابن اللعين على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله في كل موطن وموقف وقف فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم لعن أبا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية عليهم منك اللعنة أبد الآبدين. وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان بقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم فضاعف عليهم اللعن منك والعذاب الأليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي موقفي هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم وبالموالاة لنبيك وآل نبيك عليه وعليهم السلام. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت أول ظالم باللعن مني، وابدأ به أولا ثم العن الثاني والثالث والرابع. اللهم العن يزيد خامسا، والعن عبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجانة وعمر بن سعد وشمرا وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. سجود. اللهم لك الحمد حمد الشاكرين لك على مصابهم. الحمد لله على عظيم رزيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود، وثبت لي قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا مهجهم دون الحسين عليه السلام. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Before I continue, can I please ask all the brothers to come as far forward as possible, just so that we can ensure there's space for the brothers coming later and there's no interruptions to the program. Thank you. I now invite our esteemed guest, Qari, Brother Mustafa Ali, inshallah, for the recitation of the Holy Quran. Please again welcome him with the loudest of your salawats ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها المزمل قم الليل إلا قليلا نصفه أو انقص منه قليلا أو زد عليه ورتل القرآن ترتيلا. إنا سنلقي عليك قولا ثقيلا. إن ناشئة الليل هي أشد وطئا وأقوم قيلا. إن لك في النهار سبحا طويلا. واذكر اسم ربك وتبتل إليه تبتيلا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها المزمل بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها المزمل قم الليل إلا قليلا نصفه أو انقص منه قليلا أو زد عليه ورتل القرآن ترتيلا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها المزمل قم الليل إلا قليلا نصفه أو انقص منه قليلا أو زد عليه ورتل القرآن ترتيلا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها المزمل قم الليل إلا قليلا نصفه أو انقص منه قليلا أو زد عليه ورتل القرآن ترتيلا. إنا سنلقي عليك قولا ثقيلا. إن ناشئة الليل هي أشد وطئا وأقوم قيلا. إن لك في النهار سبحا طويلا. إن لك في النهار سبحا طويلا. واذكر اسم ربك وتبتل إليه تبتيلا. رب المشرق والمغرب لا إله إلا إن لك في النهار سبحا طويلا واذكر اسم ربك وتبتل إليه تبتيلا رب المشرق والمغرب لا إله إلا هو فاتخذه وكيلا واصبر على ما يقولون واصبر على ما يقولون واصبر على ما يقولون واهجرهم هجرا جميلا وذرني والمكذبين أولي النعمة ومهلهم قليلا إن لدينا أنكالا وجحيما وطعاما ذا غصة وعذابا أليما يوم ترجف الأرض والجبال وكانت الجبال يوم ترجف الأرض والجبال وكانت الجبال كثيبا مهيلا إنا أرسلنا إليكم رسولا شاهدا عليكم كما أرسلنا إلى فرعون رسولا فعصى فرعون فكيف تتقون إن كفرتم يوما يجعل الولدان شيبا السماء منفطر به كان وعده مفعولا إن هذه تذكرة فمن شاء اتخذ إلى ربه سبيلا صدق الله العلي العظيم وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات وأموات الحاضرين جميعا رحم الله من يقرأ ثواب الفاتحة مع الصلوات
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I start in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Praise be to Allah, the creator of the heavens and the earth, the all-knowing, the all-wise, the one who has created the boundless beauty and wisdom that surrounds us, the Almighty, the Supreme Being who encompasses all that exists. Salawat. We at Mohebban Al-Mahdi Youth Foundation welcome you to night 3 of our Muharram Majalis series with the esteemed Sheikh Abbas Panju. I send my condolences to the Imam of our time on the tragedy of Karbala and pray that Allah accepts all the hajats of the brothers and sisters attending these majalis and all those around the world. I start by thanking Qari, Brother Mustafa Al-Ali, for his amazing recitation of Ziyarti Ashura and the Holy Quran. His recitation of the Quran is truly captivating and beautiful, and inshallah his recitation continues to inspire and touch the hearts of those all around the world. So please help me in thanking him for his service with the loudest of salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Just a couple of announcements before I invite Brother Muhammad Abbas Kareem to the mimbar. Just some housekeeping rules as we explain every night. There's 2 fire exit doors, one at the back there and one just behind this banner. And the congregation point is the car park. Please keep these bags with you that you have. We're trying to recycle the bags as much as possible, so just pop them into your pocket and bring them again the next day, just so that we don't have to give new bags every day, and inshallah we can recycle as many bags as possible. In terms of car parking, please only park in the designated areas in the car park. We have had complaints of people parking on the footpath outside the school, and it's just going to cause problems for the majalis, it's going to cause problems for the organization. So please, there's designated areas, and once the car park is full, there's parking on the road, on the side roads. If you can park there, that would be really helpful, just so that we don't have any complaints going further. I would now like to invite Brother Muhammad Abbas Kareem. Please welcome him with the loudest of your salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
برائے تأجیل ظہور امام زمانہ باز بلند صلوات. بار دیگر نعرہ صلوات. اپنی قسمت آزما کر دیکھنا، اپنی قسمت آزما کر دیکھنا، تم مزہ خانہ سجا کر دیکھنا. سب مل کے پڑھیں. اپنی قسمت آزما کر دیکھنا، تم مزہ خانہ سجا کر دیکھنا. اپنی قسمت آزما کر دیکھنا، تم مزہ خانہ. میرا دعویٰ ہے اجڑ سکتے نہیں، میرا دعویٰ ہے اجڑ سکتے نہیں. کربلا دل میں بسا کر دیکھنا، تم مزہ خانہ سجا کر دیکھنا. بلند آواز میں. اپنی قسمت آزما کر دیکھنا، تم مزہ خانہ. تم کو زہرا کی دعا مل جائے گی، تم کو زہرا کی دعا مل جائے گی. پرچم غازی اٹھا کر دیکھنا، تم مزہ خانہ سجا کر دیکھنا. اپنی قسمت آزما کر دیکھنا، تم مزہ خانہ سجا کر. خود منافق کا پتہ چل جائے گا، خود منافق کا پتہ چل جائے گا. نعرہ حیدر لگا کر دیکھنا، تم مزہ خانہ سجا کر دیکھنا. اور توجہ چاہوں گا. سر بلندی چاہتے ہو تم مگر، سر بلندی چاہتے ہو تم مگر، شہ کے در پر سر جھکا کر دیکھنا، تم مزہ خانہ سجا کر دیکھنا. اور ہو اگر جنت زمیں پر دیکھنی، ہو اگر جنت زمیں پر دیکھنی، کربلا ایک بار جا کر دیکھنا، کربلا ایک بار جا کر دیکھنا. ہاں جیو حیدری. اپنی قسمت آزما کر دیکھنا، تم مزہ خانہ سجا کر دیکھنا. بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات. کریم کرب و بلا معجزہ دکھا دیجئے، کربلا یاد بہت ہے بلا لیجے، کریم کرب و بلا معجزہ دکھا دیجے، کربلا یاد بہت آتی ہے بلا لیجے، کریم کرب و بلا۔ حسین آپ جو چاہیں تو کچھ نہیں مشکل، تڑپ رہا ہے بہت کربلا کی یاد میں دل، تڑپ رہا ہے بہت کربلا کی یاد میں دل، پھر ایک بار مجھے کربلا دکھا دیجے، کربلا یاد بہت آتی ہے بلا لیجے، کریم کرب و بلا۔ تمہارے روضے پہ آنے میں آج دقت ہے، مگر خبر ہے تمہیں مجھ کو کتنی چاہت ہے، مگر خبر ہے تمہیں مجھ کو کتنی چاہت ہے، میں سر کے بل چلاؤں گا بس صدا دیجے، کربلا یاد بہت آتی ہے بلا لیجے، مل کے پڑھیں، کریم کرب و بلا۔ اور میرے خیال میں جب آئیں دو کٹے بازو، علم کو دیکھ کے آنکھوں میں آ گئے آنسو، علم کو دیکھ کے آنکھوں میں آ گئے آنسو، تڑپ رہا ہوں علم دار سے ملا دیجے، کربلا یاد بہت آتی ہے بلا لیجے، کریم کرب و بلا۔ اور گلوئے اصغر بے شیر چھد گیا تھا جدھر، سبیل دودھ کی جا کر لگاؤں میں بھی ادھر، سبیل دودھ کی جا کر لگاؤں میں بھی ادھر، میں زائروں سے کہوں گا مجھے دعا دیجے، کربلا یاد بہت آتی ہے بلا لیجے، کریم کرب و بلا۔ اور بلائیں آپ جسے چاہیں اپنے روضے پر، غلام آپ کی تقسیم پہ ہے راضی، مگر غلام آپ کی تقسیم پہ ہے راضی، مگر سکون دل کو ملے، سکون دل کو ملے کس طرح بتا دیجے، کربلا یاد بہت आती है बुला लीजिए, करीम कर वो बला, मोजिज़ा दिखा दीजिए, करबला याद बहुत आती है बुला लीजिए। बराए ताजील ज़हूर इमाम ज़माना बाज़ बुलंद सलावत।
पर Muhammad wa ale Muhammad salawat. Thank you to Brother Muhammad Abbas Kareem for that heartfelt recitation. Before I invite the Sheikh onto the mimbar, just a couple of announcements. Firstly, regarding the creche facilities are for children below the age of 4. So if you have any children below the age of 4 and you would like to take them up to the creche, it's just through the doors and the last classroom. Can I please urge parents that children are being left there unaccompanied? They're leaving the creche, running down the corridors. It is creating a huge health and safety hazard. So please, if your children are in the creche area, they must be accompanied at all times. So can we please make sure if you are taking your children up there, there is a stream that you can inshallah listen to the majlis from, just as long as the children are accompanied there, just to make sure that there's no health and safety hazards. Inshallah, tomorrow night, following the majlis, we will have namaz and then we will have a Q&A session with the Sheikh. So please do join us for the Q&A session. If you have any questions that you would like answering, inshallah, the Sheikh will be there to answer all questions. The volunteers all have these green armbands around their arms. So inshallah, that should differentiate volunteers. So if anyone has got any questions, wants to ask anything, or wants to give any donations, wants to volunteer, then inshallah you can follow and find anyone with these green armbands, and they are volunteering for the majalis of Imam al-Hussein. Can I have one final request that anyone that doesn't need to sit on seats, if you can possibly sit on the floor. There are a lot of people, a lot of elderly community that come a little bit later on and they struggle to find a chair. Unfortunately, we can only put so many chairs out. So if it is possible for you to sit on the floor and you can sit on the floor, then we would really appreciate you giving up a chair just so that someone in the elder community can take it. Finally, just before I invite the Sheikh, as I said before, of course, these majalis cannot continue without your cooperation, without your donations. So inshallah, there is a lot of brothers and sisters out there with card machines, with boxes. So any of your donations would be really helpful, inshallah, in continuing and allowing these Muharram majalis and other majalis throughout the year to continue. Inshallah, now as I invite the Sheikh onto the mimbar, as you all stand up for him, for his respect, please can I all ask you to all come as far forward as possible. Just fill up all these tiny little gaps that are here, just so it stops any interruption and the Sheikh doesn't have to stop his majlis just to ask brothers and sisters to come forward. So I invite the Sheikh onto the mimbar for his lecture. Please all stand up in his respect and move as far forward as you can. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Nare takbir, Nare takbir, Nare risalat, Nare risalat, Nare Haidari, 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 Bar Muhammad wa ale Muhammad salawat.
سورة المباركة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء، حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا، أبي القاسم محمد. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، لا سيما ولي الله الحجة ابن الحسن صاحب الأمر والزمان. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل فرجه. وروحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم وعلى غاصبي حقوقهم وعلى منكري فضائلهم من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. آمين رب العالمين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة. يا غريب الغرباء، يا مظلوم كربلاء، السلام على من جعل الله الشفاء في تربته، السلام على من الإجابة تحت قبته، السلام على ساكن كربلاء. فيا ليتنا ثم يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي، يا سادتي، فنفوز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، قال مولانا إمام مسلم بن عقيل: سمعت أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب يقول إن الإيمان قيد الفتك. صدق إمام مسلم وصدق أمير المؤمنين صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. نوروا مجالسكم بذكر محمد وآل محمد. أحبائي, attempting to understand the grandeur of Karbala and the grandeur of Ashura is a lifelong journey. And within this lifelong journey, truthfully speaking, the mind is restricted when it comes to understanding the true grandeur of Karbala. But regardless of that, it is a lifelong journey. And the inspiration that emanates from the revolution of Ashura and the sacrifice of Karbala is an inspiration that is there for eternity. Karbala was inspirational for the Anbiya and the Awliya of Allah even before it occurred. And Karbala remains an inspiration for the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for eternity. And when I say eternity, Karbala is an inspiration even in Alam al-Barzakh. Karbala is an inspiration even on the Day of Judgment. Karbala will continue to remain an inspiration even in Jannah. How this can be? Perhaps if Allah Azza wa Jal grants us an opportunity in the future to discuss this with detail and hadith from Ahlul Bayt to show you that Karbala and the impact of Karbala surpasses this dunya and this material temporal realm of existence. But nevertheless, the inspiration that is derived from Karbala is eternal. And understanding and comprehending the grandeur of Karbala is a lifelong journey. And as you embark upon this journey in order to perfect your lives and ascend the ranks of spiritual perfection, it is absolutely instrumental that you study the roles and the responsibility of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel when it comes to the revolution of Ashura. It becomes very difficult for a person to gain an understanding of the grandeur of Karbala if he or she didn't pay attention to understanding and analyzing the revolution of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel. For indeed, it was Imam Muslim bin Aqeel, by setting the foundations of the revolution of Ashura, he was able to a great extent define the shape, direction, and the victory that was attained on the plains of Karbala. And inshallah, for the purpose of tonight's lecture, I would like to share with you, by way of analysis, 4 major operations that Imam Muslim bin Aqeel was engaged in within the Kufan aspect or within the Kufan term of the revolution of Ashura. And through this we are able to gain a glimpse of the ma'rifah and the status of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel and his contribution towards ensuring that Karbala would remain eternal. All of this with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil faraja. Awalan ahibba'i, from the distinctions of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel is that from amongst the companions of Imam al-Hussein, Imam Muslim bin Aqeel was that companion who was designated and appointed as the ambassador of Imam al-Hussein. And it is important that before we jump in or before we begin analyzing the four major operations of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel, it is important for us to pay attention to the circumstances under which Muslim bin Aqeel was sent to the city of Kufa. And number two, it is important for us to understand the dynamics of the city to which he was sent. Beginning with the second part, Imam Muslim bin Aqeel was appointed by Imam al-Hussein as his ambassador when he wrote to the people of Kufa and said to them, قَدْ بَعَثْتُ إِلَيْكُمْ أَخِي وَابْنِ عَمِّي وَثِقَّةِ مِنْ أَهْلِ بَيْتِي. I am sending to you the people of Kufa, my brother, my cousin, and the most trustworthy person from my family. Min ahli bayti, Imam Muslim bin Aqeel. And you notice that when it comes to understanding the gigantic task that was bestowed upon Imam Muslim bin Aqeel, you find that the city that Imam Muslim bin Aqeel was sent to, the city of Kufa. The city of Kufa in 60 AH was one of the most politically volatile cities that existed within the Islamic Empire at that time. This is a city, number one, that was established as a military garrison. Number two, it was a city that had been populated with diverse theological backgrounds and tribal affiliations. It is then a city that became the capital of the entire Muslim Ummah during the apparent Khilafat of Amirul Mu'mineen after the Battle of Jamal that was initiated by Aisha. The capital was moved from Medina al-Munawwara to Kufa. And you find that this is that same capital city, the city of Kufa. It was the capital during the apparent Khilafah of Amirul Mu'mineen and the apparent Khilafah of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba before he accepted the ceasefire with Muawiyah. Ahibba'i, these are aspects of history where inter Shi'i, Matami, lover of Imam al-Hussein and Amirul Mu'mineen must be well grounded in these aspects of history. Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, Bain al-Qawsayn, between brackets, Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba was not forced into a peace treaty. Yeah, peace treaty with Muawiyah. It is what we would consider in today's political terms a ceasefire. And one of the goals of that ceasefire was to lay the foundation for a grand explosive revolution like the revolution of Imam al-Hussein. In any case, Kufa was the capital city of the Islamic Empire. And this capital city then moved back to, or the capital city was then shifted from Kufa towards Sham. It was a politically volatile city with tribal allegiances that varied between different spectrums altogether. It is in the state of, or it is in this volatile city that Imam al-Hussein sends Imam Muslim bin Aqeel to. Number one. Number two, the circumstances under which Imam Muslim bin Aqeel was sent to Kufa. Imam Muslim bin Aqeel was sent to Kufa as the ambassador of Imam al-Hussein in the most sensitive period of Islamic history. Notice, it is 60 AH. Imam al-Hussein has left Medina on the 25th or the 27th of Shahrul Rajab and has left from Medina towards Mecca. What has just happened is that on 15th of Rajab of 60 AH, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan al-La'in has died and has begun his journey in eternal damnation. Yazid, la'natullah alayh, has assumed the throne of his father. Imam al-Hussein has refused to pledge allegiance to Yazid in Medina and has left Medina without making any official statement of rebellion. All that the people know is that Imam al-Hussein has left Medina and has gone towards Mecca. In the meantime, there are thousands upon thousands of people from the city of Kufa writing letters to Imam al-Hussein, asking him to acknowledge their pleas and stand up in revolution, for they will accept him as the Imam and the leader. The Imam has not officially responded to a single letter that has been authored by the people of Kufa. And you must also keep in mind that the Kufans were inviting Imam al-Hussein towards revolution, not only upon the death of Muawiyah al-La'in, but they were writing letters inviting Imam al-Hussein to stand up in revolution and assume political leadership, even from the time after the istishhad and the martyrdom of Imam al-Mujtaba. Because between the martyrdom of Imam al-Mujtaba and the standing up in the revolution of Imam al-Hussein, there is a period of give or take 10 years where Imam was in Medina. Imam never responded to them. So within the face of these turbulent economic times, Imam has left Medina without any official statement, without any official announcement. Imam Muslim bin Aqeel is going within this circumstance, within this time. Number two, Imam Muslim bin Aqeel is going to a city where people have written thousands of letters, in the thousands. According to some of the historians, 12,000 letters. According to certain historians, 18,000 letters. And within the people who have written the letters to Imam al-Hussein, there is a wide spectrum of masses. There are people who have written to Imam al-Hussein to lead them in revolution and assume the leadership of the Islamic Ummah, not because they saw him as a divinely appointed Imam by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No, they saw him as a political figure who, if he comes into power, they are going to actualize their political interests. They'll be able to actualize their economic interests. They will be able to actualize their social interests. It was a bay'ah based on maslihah. As you know, Imam al-Hussein himself said that people associate and affiliate themselves with the religion to the extent that they benefit. If your maslihah is in a certain thing, if your personal interest will be actualized in a certain thing, you will hold on to the religion. The minute the religion goes against or clashes with your personal interest, people are very willing to abandon the religion. So there were different people. There were people who wrote to Imam al-Hussein without a doubt, who were staunch, hardcore supporters, Shi'i to the bone, like Sulaiman ibn Sard and Mukhtar and Habib ibn Madahir and Abu Thumama and all these likes, without a doubt. There were thousands of them, in fact up to 10,000, as you will see later in the lecture. And from amongst them, you had people who were 50-50. They believed in the Imam. They saw the Imam as a good alternative to Yazid. But their faith in Imam was not staunch to the extent that they would give themselves in full loyalty to the Imam. You know how we say in our slang, in the local dialect or within the slang, flaky people. They are there, but they are not really there. They give you all these promises, but they really can't stand up. They can't pull through. You can't depend on these guys. They change flags and they change teams at any time. Ala kullin, Imam Muslim bin Aqeel is going to Kufa in this circumstance, in this sort of a city, with all these sensitivities and all this turbulence around him. For you can imagine, the fact that Imam al-Hussein appoints Imam Muslim bin Aqeel as an ambassador to go to such a turbulent city within such a turbulent time, it allows you to understand the character and the personality and the qualifications of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel, in that he was an expert when it came to analyzing socio-political and theological governance within the most turbulent cities within the Islamic environment or within the Islamic empire of the time. To be able to lead a revolution and to set the foundation of a revolution within the fold of secrecy at this time required a person of the highest level of political, and theological diligence. This is Imam Muslim bin Aqeel. The historians mention that Imam Muslim bin Aqeel comes into the city of Kufa. And note that if you were to refer back to the final conversation that Imam al-Hussein has with Imam Muslim bin Aqeel, Imam al-Hussein instructs Imam Muslim bin Aqeel to conduct his affairs with diligence and with secrecy until the time is right. Imam Muslim bin Aqeel reaches the city of Kufa, according to a number of historians, on the 5th of Shawwal. And from the 5th of Shawwal, the ambassador of Imam al-Hussein, and it is important for us, when you understand, or as you understand the grandeur of this revolution of Karbala, this office, the ambassador and the embassy of Imam al-Hussein that was operating from the city of Kufa was meticulously planned out in all its functions and the mannerisms in which these functions would be carried out. This is the Hujjah and the Wali Allah al-Ard who is setting the foundation for this most grand revolution that is about to occur. Imam Muslim bin Aqeel reaches the city of Kufa on the 5th of Shawwal. And the historians mention that this ambassador of Imam al-Hussein set up his residence and his office within the house of Mukhtar. And it is also narrated by the likes of Ibn Shahr Ashub that between the 5th of Shawwal up till towards approximately the end of Dhul Qa'ad or the beginning of Dhul Hijjah, there were at least close to 18,000 people who had given bay'ah to Imam Muslim bin Aqeel, which allows us to understand that when Imam Muslim bin Aqeel, as the ambassador, this is an official position, as the ambassador of Imam al-Hussein, mobilized the masses, the first office or the first operation as the ambassador of Imam al-Hussein is that he began to mobilize the masses by delivering sermons and inviting them towards unconditional obedience towards Imam al-Hussein. And as a statesman, Imam Muslim bin Aqeel possessed the highest level of eloquence, where he was able to rally all the different political spectrums that existed during the time and was able to secure 12 to 18,000 pledges of allegiance. This is number one. Number two, you will notice that the historians mention that Muslim bin Aqeel was inviting the people towards a pledge of allegiance, meaning that those who were giving bay'ah to Muslim bin Aqeel were in essence giving bay'ah to Imam al-Hussein, meaning that a bay'ah to Imam Muslim bin Aqeel required obedience towards Muslim bin Aqeel. And this is a point, i'tiqadi ahibba'i, ma'rifah of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel. He was designated a position as an ambassador of the Imam, that obedience towards Imam Muslim bin Aqeel was equivalent to obedience towards a ma'soom Imam. Shay'un ajib and gharib. Very few times in history you will find that a ma'soom Imam has delegated such a level of unconditional submission and obedience to a representative of his. It's Imam Muslim bin Aqeel. This is a ma'rifah of his personality and his status. In any case, the first operation of this grand embassy of Imam al-Hussein set up by Imam Muslim bin Aqeel in the city of Kufa was to mobilize the masses, and number two, seek bay'ah from them. This is the first major operation that was happening. Number two, from the operations that were carried out by the embassy of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel as the ambassador within an official capacity of Imam al-Hussein is that Imam Muslim bin Aqeel set up the infrastructure for a covert military operation that was to be orchestrated and launched from inside the city of Kufa. And we are able to understand this when we begin to deep dive into certain historical texts, through which historical texts may not necessarily give you the entire word-to-word description, but as a historian, as you begin to compare and begin to gather narratives between different texts, you are able to put together like pieces of a puzzle to get a clearer picture. You will find that, for example, in Kitab al-Irshad, Sheikh al-Mufid, rahmatullah alayh, one of the custodians, you can say, of Shiaism within the early periods of the Ghaibah of Imam al-Hujjah, you find that Sheikh Mufid in Kitab al-Irshad mentions that during the time of the office of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel in the city of Kufa, he had tasked Abu Thumama to purchase weapons. And number two, Muslim ibn Awsaja was tasked with the responsibility of collecting funds, and a part of these funds were then allocated to Abu Thumama in order to purchase weapons. This is mentioned by Sheikh al-Mufid in Kitab al-Irshad. So when you look through the entire historical narrative holistically, collectively, you begin to understand that Imam Muslim bin Aqeel, as the ambassador of Imam al-Hussein, who is setting up the foundation of this grand revolution of Karbala and Ashura, a part of the operations of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel was to set up this covert military operation through which arms and weapons would be procured in the event that Bani Umayyah resorted as a tyrannical dictatorship and regime, if they were to revert to violence and they were to revert to eliminating the seeds of the revolution through violent means, Muslim bin Aqeel as an ambassador would have people who are empowered to self-defense. And you find it is the likes of Abu Thumama, by the way. Imam Muslim bin Aqeel played a critical role in ensuring the likes of Abu Thumama and Habib ibn Madahir and Muslim ibn Awsaja, after the massive treason, would actually leave the city of Kufa and make sure they catch up with the army and the group of Imam al-Hussein. And the treason that happened in Kufa, we have spoken about it quite a bit in previous lectures and in previous years, and it's very clear that it was the non-Shi'as who had pledged allegiance to Imam al-Hussein and to Imam Muslim bin Aqeel, who eventually defaulted, the non-Shi'as that defaulted. That led to the execution and the martyrdom of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel. Ala kullin, this has been discussed in depth in previous majalis. For you find that Imam Muslim bin Aqeel had this military operation in which he was overseeing and orchestrating through Abu Thumama the procurement of weapons and military arms such that the Shia are well equipped for self-defense. Number two, you also understand that the revolution and the success of any revolutionary movement is contingent upon the availability of finances and funds. You cannot lead a revolution that is there to topple and overcome an entire regime in its entirety without a financial plan. And you find that Imam Muslim bin Aqeel had orchestrated a plan and had delegated Muslim ibn Awsaja to administer this financial office. Number two, covert military operations that had a network through which the revolution in Kufa would be funded. Number three, Ahibai, Imam Muslim bin Aqeel's third major operation inside of Kufa was to distinguish the loyal supporters from the non-loyal supporters. And from the time that Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad al-La'in entered into the city of Kufa, there were close to 10,000 Shia who were either imprisoned or were executed for their support of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel. Again, this we have talked about in previous years, so I will not elaborate as much on this. But there were close to 10,000 people who were arrested. And one of the core functions of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel was that once the loyal Shias who have been arrested and have been removed from the picture, those who were around him, through or at the expense of his own life, he was able to expose these people and show the world and ensure that the revolution of Karbala is not hijacked by unloyal supporters such as these. Number 4, and this is important, Ahibai. With salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Before we jump on to point number 4, it should be of no surprise that Imam Muslim bin Aqeel was in charge of orchestrating and designing a covert military operation that was to be the foundation of setting or establishing the imamate of Imam al-Hussein. It should not be of any surprise, keeping in mind that Imam Muslim bin Aqeel was or had experience as a seasoned warrior even before the days of Karbala. For indeed, history has recorded that Imam Muslim bin Aqeel, as a celebrated general, accredited warrior, had served in the army of Imam Amirul Mu'mineen. And the historians even narrate that Imam Muslim bin Aqeel was one of the commanders of the right wing in the army of Amirul Mu'mineen during the battle of Siffin against Muawiyah al-La'in. Imam Muslim bin Aqeel was commanding the right wing together with Imam Hassan and Imam al-Hussein. Whereas the left wing from the Bani Hashim, there was Muhammad ibn Hanafiya that was commanding from the left wing. And we also have historical narrations that mention that together with Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr was leading the left wing of the army of Amirul Mu'mineen. For Muslim bin Aqeel alayhi salam was a seasoned warrior in that sense. And from here you begin to understand this personality of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel. Not only was he an eloquent statesman or a spokesman, not only was he one of the most senior and diligent men from amongst the Ahlul Bayt of Imam al-Hussein when it came to geopolitical, theological analysis of the communities and the cities within the Islamic empire of the time. But in addition to his political diligence, in addition to his eloquence as a spokesman, he was a celebrated senior warrior and a general from the generals of the army of Amirul Mu'mineen, to the extent that his diligence in war was at such a high level. Imam al-Hussein says to him, "Huwa thiqati, my trustworthy brother from my Ahlul Bayt," to be trusted to run such a covert military operation within such a turbulent and politically volatile environment. Something that deserves our contemplation. In any case, the fourth office or the fourth operation of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel as the ambassador of Imam al-Hussein in the city of Kufa. Imam al-Hussein was an ambassador of the values of the revolution of Imam al-Hussein. Ahibai, I apologize and I'm very sorry to break your concentration and to inconvenience you, There are Matamis who are outside struggling to get a place to come and sit inside. With the kindness of your heart, if you are humbly able to come as far forward as possible, fill any gaps between yourselves, allow the other Matamis to participate in the majlis of Imam Muslim bin Akil. And I'm sure maybe this also applies to the sisters as well. So if the Matamis from the sisters can also move forward, inshaAllah. Tilawat salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. A second of your loudest salawat to hasten the reappearance of Maulana Sahib al-Amri wa Zaman. And the third, just as loud, and pay your allegiance and pay tribute to Imam Muslim bin Akil, who is buried in Masjid al-Kufa. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The fourth operation of Imam Muslim bin Akil is that he was an ambassador of the values of the sacrifice of Imam al-Hussein. He was an ambassador of the values of the revolution for which Imam al-Hussein was standing up. He was an ambassador of the principles and the values. Ahibai, having principles in life is very important. Having values in life is very important. And before I move in to discuss this aspect of the revolution for Imam Muslim bin Akil, please allow me to spend a couple of moments over here as a by the way kind of point. Bain al-Qawsayn. Having principles and values is important. You cannot lead, number one, you cannot lead a life. You cannot lead a life without having any principles. You cannot lead a life without having any values. Do not be that person in life who just sits on the fence and refuses to take a stance for what is right and what is wrong. When it comes to religion, when it comes to social life, when it comes to political life and political commentary requires diligence. But ideologically, jurisprudentially, develop yourselves. And I say this to myself, develop to anybody before I say this first. I need to develop myself and nurture my personality such that I'm a person who will live on this earth and make a difference to the community that I live in by standing up for values, standing up for principles, believing in principles, propagating those principles. Don't just be an extra burden on this carbon print and God knows what's happening over here in the dunya. Allah. And in order for you to believe in a set of principles, to abide by a set of principles, to abide by a set of values, the prerequisite for that is ilm, to seek knowledge. And then sure, just like we said on the first night, there are so many, mashallah, social issues that you and I are facing. There are so many religious issues that you and I are facing. There are so many theological misconceptions that have been spread on a daily basis. Sometimes even under the name of Imam al-Hussein, people are being misguided. Everywhere you go, whether you like it or you don't like it, I'm not trying to be negative, but this is the reality in which we live. And we got to positively embrace this challenge because we claim and we, inshallah, we are from the Shias of Amir al-Mu'mineen. You don't shy away from challenges. You take challenges head on. And stand up for principles. Doesn't mean you got to be violent. But you need to have a set of principles. But in order to abide by a set of principles, you need to have ilm. And seeking ilm from the knowledge of Ali Muhammad. Trust me, there is no person that is, when it comes to this journey of self-perfection and the concept of what is happiness and right and wrong, nobody from Oprah and Humphrey and John Doe and whoever else exists out there, no one will give you a solution like the way Amir al-Mu'mineen and Imam al-Sadiq give you a solution. No one is going to teach you, whether it's a Rumi or a Umi, they will not teach you to love Allah in the same way that Amirul Mu'mineen will teach you to love Allah. There is no one who can guide you towards the philosophy of life and existence in the way that Imam al-Hadi can guide you. Drink from the purest streams of knowledge, streams and fountains of knowledge that have been granted to you by Allah. And it's important. If you don't take knowledge from Ahlul Bayt and don't build your principles or abide by principles and recognize principles and values from the school of Ahlul Bayt, we're led, there is absolutely no doubt we're destined for destruction. It's like one of the brothers we were speaking with some time back, and they were telling me, subhanallah, social media is the place for all the fracas. Everybody who's got an idea, everyone who's got a philosophy, social media is the place to go. It's a market. It's a market out there. You want anything you want in life, you will find it there in social media, whether it's right or wrong. Everyone has an opinion, and the place to showcase your opinion is this. He was telling me, subhanallah, there is a whole group of people, men and women, and they're on their social media posts, they've got all these banners of pro-choice, and I have the right to abortion, and at the bottom of it is hashtag Yali Madad. Ajib. Pro-choice and then Yali Madad. Brother, you okay? The Amirul Mu'mineen accept right to abortion? What does the teachings and the Sharia of Amirul Mu'mineen say that? I got to be able to take my principles and my values, whatever you abide to in life, whatever stance you decide to take, whether a certain action is right or wrong. Mine is to tell you, go back to the teachings of Amirul Mu'mineen and have a look. What is the stance of Ahlul Bayt when it came to this? Now he comes and tells you, yeah, I'm all there for all types of genders. Hashtag Ya Mahdi. So no, Ya Mahdi, all genders. What does the teachings of Imam al-Mahdi tell you about this? What does the divine appointed Imam tell you? If you're going to pick or live by principles, live by the right principles. And seek these principles from the knowledge of Ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imam Muslim bin Akil was an ambassador of the values and the principles of Imam al-Hussein. As you know, and I depend on you because inshallah you're all familiar with the history of Imam Muslim bin Akil. As he comes into Kufa and he gathers this loyal support and the bay'ah of 12 to 18,000 people, Yazid al-La'in gets news from the very people of Kufa that Muslim bin Aqeel is causing fracas in the city of Kufa. Yazid al-La'in consults Sir John. Sir John, his Roman advisor. Sir John says to him, well, the governor of Kufa, Nu'man ibn Bashir, is absolutely weak. Replace him with Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, and you should reconcile or consolidate the governorate of Kufa and the governorate of Basra into one major governorate that will be led by Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad al-La'in ibn Marjana eventually comes into the city of Kufa. And when he enters into the city of Kufa, the first thing, or one of the first things that he does, is that in addition to creating an atmosphere of terror, he embarks upon a mission to identify the core strategic supporters of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel. Who are the influential people within the community of Kufa who are supporting Imam Muslim bin Aqeel? And he finds over there that there were, from amongst the many supporters, loyal supporters of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel, there was two. Hani ibn Urwa, and number two, Sharik ibn Abdullah. Both of them, Hani ibn Urwa and Sharik ibn Abdullah, were from the most staunchest and most loyal Shias of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And both of them had fought in the battles of Jamal, and in the battle of Naharwan, and in the battle of Siffin. Sharik was absolutely influential from a tribalistic affiliation, and the fact that he had the high scope of influence even in the city of Basra. Now it so happened that as Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad al-La'in came into the city of Kufa, Sharik fell absolutely ill. He was overcome by a sickness that eventually led to his death within 3 to 4 days. Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad finds out that the core supporters are Hani and Sharik. And Sharik has now fell ill. They are all in the house of Hani. Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad sends one of his governors, or one of his guards, you could say, to Sharik. And he said to Sharik, the governor Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad wants to come and pay you a visit. You're sick. You're an influential man inside of Kufa. Because you're sick, the governor is going to come and visit you. Obviously, that is, Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad has no good intentions. He is coming out to suss out what are the actual covert operations that are happening that Nu'man ibn Bashir was not able to lay control over or put a rein over them. As this happened, Sharik consults with Hani ibn Urwa and Imam Muslim bin Aqeel. He says to them, Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad is coming to visit me because I am sick. His guards are a bit low. His guard is low because the whereabouts of Muslim bin Aqeel was concealed. This has been a covert operation for a great time. He says to them, Sharik says to them, Muslim bin Aqeel and to Hani, this is going to be the most optimal and the most prime opportunity that we have to destroy the tyrannical, despotic, violent regime of Bani Umayyah. As soon as Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad comes home and he's visiting me, he has no idea that Muslim is in the house or that Hani is in the house. What we will do is, Sharik is saying, he's saying to Muslim bin Aqeel, I will give you a hint. When his guard is low, you come out from hiding. He was supposed to hide in the house. You come out of hiding and you strike him. Let us conduct a covert assassination. Let us assassinate Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad because this chance will not come again. Remember, when Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad came into Kufa, he came with an army from Basra, and there was an army that was coming from Sham. Bain al-Qawsayn, very quickly, and I'm scared that the lecture will go over time today. But between brackets, a lot of non-Imami scholars and a lot of prior scholars who are, you could say, analysts of history, were of the opinion that Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad came into Kufa without an army, and they spread rumors that an army from Sham is coming, and without an actual army even being there, the people abandoned Imam Muslim bin Aqeel. This is actually not very true, because on the contrary, you find that the governor who is reconciling between two governorates, it was impossible for him to come without an army. In fact, we have older texts from Sheikh Muhammad al-A'iri that even mention that Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad had posted up to 30,000 of an army on the outskirts of Kufa. And if you find within the Maqtal as well, you will find that the person who beheaded Muslim bin Aqeel was a Shami, meaning that there were already elements of a Shami army that was present inside or in the vicinity of Kufa. In any case, they say, let us assassinate Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad if he's coming as an excuse, as a guest to come and visit a sick person. This dictator, this tyrant who is responsible for killing thousands upon thousands of lovers and Shias of Amir al-Mu'mineen from the time of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. This is going to be an opportune moment. You get rid of Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, Kufa comes under your hand. If you are able to gain Kufa, you will even give confidence to those flaky supporters who are neither here, neither there. Number 3, you will have sent a massive message in terms of a moral boost that Imam al-Hussein is coming into power and we have overtaken Kufa. The army of Sham is going to tremble. And at the same time, you're going to give more motivation to those Makkans who are undecided whether they should join Imam al-Hussein or not. Politically speaking, this was a no-brainer. It was a win-win situation. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad has come, assassinate him, his guards are low, there's nothing to be done. Muslim bin Aqeel remained silent. He didn't answer. Hani ibn Urwa was not in favor of Sharik's plan. Hani ibn Urwa said, we may have to reconsider what Sharik has done, because if we assassinate Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad over here, what may potentially happen is that the army of Sham will come to seek vengeance for an assassinated governor and will unleash terror in Kufa at a much more intense manner. And so long as we are unsure of these flaky supporters around us, let us not be preemptive in an action where we will not have any control over the outcome. Imam Muslim bin Aqeel is silent. Now I want to point to, because these are all lessons that we can adapt in our lives. Bain al-Qawsayn, very quickly. Imam Muslim bin Aqeel is the ambassador of Imam al-Hussein. One staunch companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Sharik, trustworthy companion, is advising politically, we need to take advantage of a situation to assassinate the most oppressive, violent, blood-loving governor that the Islamic Empire has seen, leader. We need to take this opportunity. Remember all these benefits that are there. And on the other hand, you've got Hani, who also served in the army of Amir al-Mu'mineen, who has got a total opposite, contradictory political reading of the view, where he is of the assumption that if we are preemptive, we will not be in a position of damage control. We don't know, it's unsure of. Imam Muslim bin Aqeel looked through all the books of history. Imam Muslim bin Aqeel remained silent. And we said before in the beginning of the lecture, he was at the highest level of political diligence. You know, the silence of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel has a wisdom. And this is a wisdom that you and I are able to benefit from. When you come and you analyze some of the stances and the behaviors of our community members or within communities. And when I say our community members, I don't mean to target each and any one of you inside of Manchester. Kalam Am. When you come and you look at within the Shia world, the affairs, if you do not abide by somebody else's political theory, straight away they label you as a kafir, and straight away they label you as a person who is not from the Ansar of Imam al-Hujjah, and they put accusations that you are a spy and you are this and you are that. Political commentary does not emanate from wahi of Allah. Political commentary that is absolutely 100% accurate is the political commentary that emanates from a ma'soom imam. Even during the time of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel, in an issue as sensitive as laying the foundation of the revolution of Karbala and the assassination of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, there were differences in political approach between two people who are lovers of Amir al-Mu'mineen. You don't find Muslim bin Aqeel go and tell Sharik, no, you don't have enough loyalty to Imam al-Hussein. Or he didn't tell Hani, you are a coward, you don't have enough loyalty to the Imam Zaman of your time. Person takes one stance. If you don't agree to a person's political commentary, it is as if you are not worthy of being from the army of Imam al-Hujjah. We got to take lessons from Karbala and refine our lives. Nothing good has come except from the daily disintegration of our communities. Sahil Allah, or I live in a different world. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Don't even get me started on these things. Allahu Akbar. Imam Muslim bin Aqeel remained silent. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad comes into the house to visit Sharik. Sharik is on his deathbed, sick, absolutely weak. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad is in the house, they're having a conversation and they're talking about the scenario in Kufa and this and that. And there was a signal that Sharik had communicated with Imam Muslim bin Aqeel. Imam Muslim bin Aqeel is hiding in the house. They are having this conversation, and Sharik had given Imam Muslim bin Aqeel a signal. When I say, like a code word, if I say A, B, C, D, this is the time for you to come and assassinate, strike Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad with a sword. Sharik gives the code, gives the signal once, twice, 3, 4 times. Imam Muslim bin Aqeel does not respond. At that time, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad kind of figured out that this person is trying to initiate a code word for some sort of dodgy action to happen. So he looks at Hani ibn Urwa and says, what's wrong with your companion? Hani says to him, you know, the sickness is so intense, the pain is so intense, it's become delusional. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad had also a level of diligence, but this diligence is not a divine pure diligence. It's a type of a diligence that is known as shaitana. Cunningness. It shouldn't even be diligence. It had cunningness inside of him. He was able to smell that something is not right, and he left. Muslim bin Aqeel came out of the house, came out of his room. Sharik looks at Imam Muslim bin Aqeel and says to him, "Oh Muslim, we had the most perfect opportunity to assassinate Ibn Ziyad and to take reign of Kufa. And once I recover, I guarantee you Basra." This was the imamate of Imam al-Hussein in Kufa right here, right now. Why did you not take the opportunity? Do you know what was the response of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel? He says to Sharik and to Hani, "سمعت أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب عليه السلام يقول إن الإيمان قيد الفتق." I have heard from Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib that Iman, a person who has faith, will never stoop down to deception. Ya Ali. Ajib. Faith can never allow you to stoop down to deception. The fact that even if he's a dictator and as violent as he can be, shaitani, jahannami, but if he has come into the house as a guest, we are not going to attack him through deception. Deception is actually a manifestation of cowardice. Deception is a manifestation of cowardice. Deception means lack of honor. And Imam Muslim bin Aqeel did not want the principles of the revolution of Ashura to be compromised even by an ounce. The entire Karbala was built upon bravery and honor. Values and principles. If it is going to mean that, see, we have a principle in Islam where Amir al-Mu'mineen in political governance put forward a principle where he says that the ends does not justify the means. Just in order for me to establish something that I think is religious or good or beneficial does not mean I can establish that or seek means that are haram. There is no compromise on honor. There is no compromise when it comes to chivalry and bravery. Cowardice and deception is the core trait of the enemies. Look through Karbala, the entire Maqtal. Show me one companion of Imam al-Hussein that was killed in an equal battle. Impossible, you will not find. All of them had to resort to some sort of deception in order to kill and overcome the army of Imam al-Hussein. Who was there that faced Abul Fadl Abbas? It was deception. They had to conceal behind the palm tree and then sever his arms. Imam al-Hussein, they had to resort to deception and say that you're women and you're being attacked in the tents while you are in the Furat. Shah Qasim was tying his lace when they attacked him. A 13-year-old roaring lion, 13-year-old boy, you could say youth. They didn't have the courage to face him on one-to-one battle. They struck him while he was tying the lace of his left sandal. protection of the principles and protection of the values is of the utmost importance. This is what Imam Muslim bin Aqeel was representing, an ambassador of the values of revolution, the values for which Imam al-Hussein is standing up. Whether the goal actualizes or not is one thing, but there is no compromise on values and principles. Otherwise, what makes you different from them? This is one. Number two, it was actually, in addition to this, Imam Muslim bin Aqeel saw that assassinating Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad in the house would have actually been the greatest strategic error that would have actually endangered the revolution of Imam al-Hussein. And from here we are able to see how Muslim bin Aqeel had basira and foresight. Before I move to this point, look at the qualities and the characters that we have outlined for Imam Muslim bin Aqeel through this short discussion. Number one, the highest order of political diligence. Number two, a statesman and a spokesman of the highest level. Number three, a man who would live and die by principles and values and ensure that they are not compromised in any way. A seasoned warrior of the highest level and celebrated at the highest caliber, not only when it came to war, but strategy of war. In that he led a covert military operation with a financial network that no man even Bashir had no idea of. How did Muslim bin Aqeel become Muslim? The answer is in that the answer is the way he replied Sharik. He said, سمعت أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب يقول الإيمان قيد الفتق. I heard from Amir al-Mu'mineen, meaning that if you were to contemplate on this, Muslim bin Aqeel became Muslim bin Aqeel because he was a student raised and nurtured by Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. And this is why I say if you drink from the fountain of Amir al-Mu'mineen, we have a chance to become like the dust under the feet of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel. Ya Ali. As we said, Muslim bin Aqeel had foresight and basira. Had he assassinated Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, it would have been a strategic political error. It would have actually endangered the revolution of Imam al-Hussein. See, if they would have assassinated Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, and I'm depending on your previous knowledge of the environment of Kufa, to be able to picture this clearly in your minds. If Imam Muslim bin Aqeel had actually assassinated Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, together with Hani ibn Urwa Sharik and the other Shias who are loyal and have not yet been exiled, have not yet been executed, have not been imprisoned yet, if they would have taken over the Kufan palace and announced that a revolution or a coup is now in place, it would have actually triggered free fall, uncontrolled violence in the city of Kufa, because Imam Muslim bin Aqeel was operating in a city that was tribalistically volatile. Had one aspect or one part of the tribes of Kufa, or a certain theological or a certain political tribe or affiliation that was not necessarily with Bani Umayyah, had they seen that a situation and an environment has now been created where assassination is the name of the game in order to gain political leadership, the city of Kufa would have fallen into free fall, anarchy and chaos. And you see this even in our day and age. Look at any third world country. Have you seen any third world country where a civil war has started? In any place that is marked and dominated by violence, the minute one political party begins the kidnapping of another political party, what happens? You start you trigger an entire reign of terrorism, because this political party kidnapped and assassinated that one. This one is going to kidnap and assassinate this one. You killed one, I will kill 20. You will kill 50, I will kill 60. Number one, it would have triggered uncontrollable violence, and more damage would have been done to the remaining Shias of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel. Number two, you know what would have happened? The revolution of Imam al-Hussein would have been hijacked, because the fundamental premise would have been what? The justification of violence. If Muslim bin Aqeel can initiate violence in order to set up government, that means as an ambassador of Imam al-Hussein, it is acceptable to initiate violence in order to take over government and power at the cost of bloodshed. Imam Muslim bin Aqeel was far from ever vetting such a movement to happen.
Sheikh, sorry to disturb the lecture. There is a car by the number plate BF60VVX. Can we get this moved straight away? BF60VVX. It's a Nissan Qashqai. Please, can we get this moved straight away? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Ahibbai, this is Muslim bin Aqeel, Imam Muslim bin Aqeel. And in order to uphold the values and the principles of this revolution that would then continue to be an eternal source of inspiration, he held it even at the expense of his life. The narrations mention that when the people abandoned Imam Muslim bin Aqeel, he was deserted. Imam Muslim sent the remaining companions of his to join with Imam al-Hussein on the way from Mecca towards Karbala. Imam Muslim bin Aqeel alone in Kufa, all by himself, until he was granted while he was looking through the alleyways of Kufa. Muslim bin Aqeel stood in front of the house of a lady called Taw'a. Gharib, Imam Muslim bin Aqeel, a stranger in the city of Kufa. He stood outside the house of Taw'a, this lady called Taw'a, contemplating on the next move and seeing what needs to be done at this place, because Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, after the people abandoned Imam Muslim bin Aqeel, there was a bounty that was placed on the head of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel. And people were out there to arrest him and kill him and bring him over to Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. Muslim, abandoned by the people, sits outside the house of Taw'a. She comes up, she opens the door and she says to him, "Oh man, it is not proper and it is not befitting of etiquette that a stranger should sit outside my house, especially during these turbulent times." Muslim bin Aqeel looks at her and says to her, "Can you at least afford me a glass of water?" She goes in, she brings him a glass of water. She looks at the nur that is emanating from his face. She says to him, "And who are you?" Muslim bin Aqeel says, "I am that stranger that has no family and no protection in the city of Kufa." She says, "Oh man, what tribe do you belong to?" Muslim bin Aqeel replies, "I am from Bani Hashim. I am from the family of Rasulullah. I am the family of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. I am the one who has been abandoned by the people of Kufa." This lady Taw'a was from the lovers of Amir al-Mu'mineen. She stood up and she says, "Oh Muslim, I can afford you accommodation or a stay in my house for this one night, but I fear my son because he is from the army of Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad." Muslim says, "If you afford me a shelter or you afford me a roof for this one night, I shall intercede for you with my grandfather Rasulullah." Allahu Akbar. The narrations mention mention that Muslim bin Aqeel came into the house. The lady was to prepare food for him. Muslim bin Aqeel refused to eat. On that night he spent the entire night empty stomach in a state of worship. Of an hour or so before the time of Fajr, Imam Muslim bin Aqeel closed his eyes for a few moments. In his dream he saw Amirul Mu'mineen Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib saying to him, Al-Waha, Al-Waha, Al-Ajal, Al-Ajal. O Muslim, hurry up, for indeed your time has come to meet me. Muslim opened his eyes, he renewed his ablution and his wudu, he engaged himself in worship, he recited the Salatul Fajr and was engaged in dua. At the crack of dawn, the woman came to him and she says, O Muslim, you look like you are in a state of fear and concern. Muslim says to her, this is the last day on earth for me, for indeed I have seen Amirul Mu'mineen invite me towards him. As he is sitting on the musalla reciting his ta'qibat, they hear the hooves of the horses coming and marching towards the house of Taw'a. They had figured out that Imam Muslim bin Aqeel was in the house of Taw'a. The historians mention that there were 300 horsemen that were marching, fully armed with swords and spears, marching towards the house of Taw'a in which Muslim bin Aqeel was. Muslim bin Aqeel looked at the woman and he said to her, May Allah reward you for your service, and may Rasulullah intercede for you on the day of judgment. Look at the honor of Bani Hashim. He says, I do not wish for your house to be the place and the center of the battlefield, and I do not wish for your house to be demolished at my account, so I shall come out and fight the army away such that there is no destruction that reaches your property. The narrations mention Muslim bin Aqeel performed the final sajda to shukr. He stood up, he put on his helmet for war, he took his sword in his hand and he charged out of the house of Taw'a. The narrations mention that there were 300 horsemen fully armed to the teeth. Imam Muslim bin Aqeel engaged them in a battle that was so intense. The narrations mention, non-Shia historians like Ibn Nama mention that the strength of Muslim bin Aqeel was such that he could lift a man, fully grown man in battlefield. And in this particular battle, because it was urban warfare, they were fighting in the city of Kufa between the alleyways. 300 horsemen jam-packed into the alleyways of the street in which Taw'a was living. But Muslim bin Aqeel had so much physical strength within him, divine strength from Allah, that he would be able to pick a person and throw them onto the rooftop. The narrations mention that from 300 horsemen that came to attack Muslim bin Aqeel, not a single one of them was able to overcome Muslim. In fact, from a strategy of self-defense, Muslim ibn Aqeel went on to the offense. Ibn Naba mentions that from 300 horsemen, 180 of them were sent to Jahannam wa bi'sal masir at the sword of Imam Muslim bin Aqeel. Allahu Akbar. From the horsemen that are over there, from the army of Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, one of them is Qais ibn Ash'ath al-La'in. The brother, his sister is the one who poisoned Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba Ju'dah, La'ina. And his other brother Muhammad al-La'in was also present there in Karbala. Or Muhammad ibn Ash'ath himself was involved in the attack of Muslim bin Aqeel, was also involved in Karbala. Their father Ash'ath ibn Qais played a role even when it came to the martyrdom of Amirul Mu'mineen. Family tree, khabitha, to be honest. Ibn Ash'ath writes a letter to sends a messenger to Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad saying that go and tell the governor that we need reinforcement. Muslim bin Aqeel has annihilated half our army of 180 soldiers killed from an army of 300. The messenger goes back to Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad is astonished and he sends a messenger back again. He says to them, what is wrong with you? How can 180 men be killed by a single person? What if I was to send you to an army of people who are made like Muslim bin Aqeel? What shall you do, Yani Imam al-Hussein? Ibn Ashad replies back, messenger, over here the 120 remaining horsemen are trying to hold fort against Muslim bin Aqeel. And over here between Ash'ath and Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, messengers are running to and forth. They need reinforcement. Ibn Ash'ath says to Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, you did not send us to a grocer from the grocers of Kufa. You have sent us to one of the lions and one of the sharpest swords that are owned by Al Muhammad. The narration Ibn Asakir says, فَبَعَثُوا إِلَيْهِ الْأَسْكَرِ الْعَظِيمِ. They sent towards Muslim ibn Aqeel a massive army to come and to dominate or to capture a single person. The narrations mention as they sent in more reinforcement in their thousands, Muslim bin Aqeel continued fighting valiantly and courageously, pushing the army back. They didn't know how to kill and how to overcome Muslim bin Aqeel. So the historians mention that the army of Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad began to stand onto the rooftops. From the rooftops they began throwing stones on Muslim bin Aqeel. There were others who started shooting arrows from the rooftop at Muslim bin Aqeel. He was covered with injuries from head to toe until one of the enemies came and threw a stone that hit the temple of Muslim bin Aqeel. His eye became swollen and he was bleeding from his head. But Muslim bin Aqeel kept pushing forward until they were not able to gather, they were not able to counter him. So the narration mentions Ibn Ash'ad said, dig a hole in the ground, dig a hole that is deep enough for him to fall into. We shall then cover it and trap him. They dug the hole. Muslim bin Aqeel on this side kept pushing the horsemen back. They laid the trap. Then they started lighting firewood. They took sticks of wood. They lit them on fire. They began throwing it on Muslim bin Aqeel. Don't ask me how many third-degree burns Muslim bin Aqeel had. But when I hear that they were throwing burning wood on Muslim bin Akil, my heart goes to the burning door of Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra. Allah, Allah. My heart goes to the burning tents of Shah Meghariban. The narrations mention they were throwing firewood on Ibn Aqeel. This one is throwing stones. This one is shooting arrows. As Muslim bin Aqeel kept pushing forward, he fell into this pit over here. And as soon as he fell into the pit, the narrations mention they stood at the top of the pit and all of them started pelting stones on Muslim bin Aqeel. Wa mazluma. At that moment when he was weak and covered with wounds, Muhammad ibn Ash'ath came and he struck Muslim bin Aqeel with a sword from the top of his forehead to the bottom of the chin. Muslim bin Aqeel was bleeding. Allah, they captured Muslim bin Aqeel and they tied his hands with ropes. They brought him and they dragged him into Dar al-Imara, into the presidential palace. Muslim bin Aqeel was brought in front of Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. The narrations mention when Muslim bin Aqeel entered in, he didn't even say salam to Ibn Ziyad. Ibn Ziyad looks at him and says, or one of the guards says, why do you not say salam to the Amir? Muslim bin Aqeel, while bleeding from his face, and narrations mention he was bleeding from the mouth as well, with blood flowing down his face and through his lips. He looked at the guard and he said, he's not my Amir. Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad says to him, oh Muslim, you are the one who is responsible for coming to Kufa and disuniting the people of Kufa. Muslim bin Aqeel said to him, he said, I didn't come to disunite them. I came to respond to a call to establish the imamate of Imam al-Hussein because we are able and we are the ones who are appointed to rule with justice. Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad looked at him and said, and do you think we are not able to rule with justice? The narration mentions Ibn Ziyad فَشَتَمَ عَلِيًّا وَحُسَيْنَ. He began to hurl verbal insults at Amirul Mu'mineen, at Imam al-Hussein. One of our teachers in the Hausa says, do you know, for Ali Muhammad, something more painful than an arrow, something more painful than a sword and a spear is from any one of Ali Muhammad to listen to an insult that is hurled at Amirul Mu'mineen. Imam Musa ibn Ja'far Ruhilahul Fida says, says, to show you, Imam al-Qadim mentions that when I was imprisoned underground, but when I would lift my face to gain some fresh air, he says sometimes the gods of Bani Abbas would kick me on the face, sometimes they would kick me on the chest. But Imam Musa al-Qadim says, do you know what hurt more than the kick on the face and on the chest? He said, what? His companion says, what? Imam Musa al-Qadim says, when they insulted my mother Fatima. Allah, Ya Shi'at ala Muhammad. He began to insult Amir al-Mu'mineen. I don't know what went through the heart of Muslim bin Aqeel, but Muslim bin Aqeel couldn't take it. So he said, O enemy of Allah, if you are going to kill me, then do as you want, for indeed this day has been prophesied. The narrations mention they took Muslim bin Aqeel to the very top of the roof, at the very top of the palace. They tied his hands together. Muslim bin Aqeel's tears began to roll down his face. Ibn Ashat began to mock Muslim bin Aqeel. He says, well, you are such a brave warrior and a commander. How is it that you cry at death? Isn't this cowardice? Muslim bin Aqeel looked at him and said, by Allah, I am not worried and scared about death, but I am thinking about Hussein. Allah, I do not want Imam al-Hussein to come to this city of treason and this city of deception. The narrations mention that this Shami person came. They forced Imam Muslim bin Aqeel to kneel down. The Shami struck Muslim bin Aqeel with a sword from the back of the neck. The first strike was not even severe enough to strike. It was not severe enough to kill Muslim bin Aqeel, but it hurt Muslim bin Aqeel so much that he lay down, blood gushing from the neck, neither dead, neither alive. The Shami struck the neck of Muslim bin Aqeel for a second time. He severed the head from the body totally. The narrations mention they held the head of Muslim. They threw it from the top of the castle down onto the streets. Allah, Allah, Ya Shi'at ala Muhammad. The narrations mention they took the body of Muslim bin Aqeel from the very top of the palace. They threw it down to the ground. Do not ask me how many bones were broken in the body of Muslim. Allah, Allah, Ya Shia, if you are able to hear this Masaib of Muslim bin Aqeel, a broken body, a body whose bones are broken, a body that is headless, is lying on the streets of Kufa. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad says, I want you to do two more things to this body. Allah, Ya Shia, Masaib is finished. He says, two things I want you to do to this body. He says, tie this broken body with the broken bones, tie this broken body by the legs to a horse, and I want you to drag the lifeless, headless body of Muslim in the streets of Kufa. Allah, Allah, Yabna Aqeel. The people of Kufa celebrating Eid. The body of Muslim bin Aqeel has been dragged in the city. And then once they did that, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad says, crucify the body of Muslim bin Aqeel, but crucify him in such a way that he will be humiliated and no one will dare join Muslim. He said, what do? We have already separated the head from the body. Then Maktal mentions Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad said, crucify him mankuban, meaning crucify him upside down. They lifted the body of Muslim bin Aqeel and they nailed the broken legs into it. हुआ मजलूमा मातम मुस्लिम मातम हुसैन. Ya Hussein, Ya
یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین، مل کے پڑھے یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین، حیا علی خیر العمل، حیا علی خیر العمل، حیا علی خیر العمل، حیا علی خیر العمل، حیا خیر العمل، یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین، سلسلہ جاری رہے، ہم رہے یا نہ رہے، یہ عزاداری رہے، شمع سے شمع جلے، سلسلہ جاری رہے، ہم رہے یا نہ رہے، یہ عزاداری رہے، ہے شمع سے شمع جلے، مل کے نام مولا، سلسلہ جاری رہے، ہم ماشاءاللہ یہ عزاداری رہے، ہے شمع سے شمع جلے، اپنی نسلوں کو سکھاتے رہو ماتم کا ہنر، سینہ در سینہ کرے بس یہ عزاداری سفر، جیسے حالات بھی ہوں رسم یہ جاری رہے، ہم رہے یا نہ رہے، یہ عزاداری رہے، ہے شمع سے شمع جلے، سلسلہ جیو ماتمی، ہم رہے یا نہ رہے، یہ عزاداری رہے، ہے شمع سے شمع، لاکھ بدلے یہ زمانے کی روش اور موسم، ایک پل بھی نہ رکے اشک ازار ماتم، ماتم شہ کا جنون ذہن پر طاری رہے، ہم رہے یا نہ رہے، یہ عزاداری رہے، ہے شمع سے شمع جلے، سلسلہ جاری رہے، ہم رہے یا یہ عزاداری رہے، ہے شمع سے شمع جلے، مل کے سلسلہ جیو ماتمی مرحبا، داری رہے، ہے شمع سے شمع جلے، یہ سبیلیں یوں ہی آباد رہے اہل عزا، اور گھر گھر پہ نظر آئے علم غازی کا، یہ علم اونچا رہے، یہ علمداری رہے، ہم رہے یا نہ رہے، یہ عزاداری رہے، ہے شمع سے شمع جلے، ہے سلسلہ جاری رہے، ہم رہے جیو ماتمی، یہ عزاداری رہے، ہے شمع سے شمع جلے، ہے سلسلہ، ہم رہے یا نہ رہے، یہ عزاداری رہے، ہے شمع سے شمع جلے، ماں بہنوں کوہ پیغام میرا صرف یہی، اپنے بچوں کو جلوسوں سے نہیں روکو کبھی، یہ شہادت ہے شرف، یہ شہادت ہے شرف، یہ شرف جاری رہے، ہم رہے یا نہ رہے، یہ عزاداری رہے ہے، شمع سے شمع جلے، سلسلہ جاری رہے، ہم رہے یا ماشاءاللہ، یہ عزاداری رہے، شمع سے شمع جلے، ہے سلسلہ جاری رہے، رہے ہے، شمع سے شمع جلے، اپنے گھر میں بھی عزا خانہ سجانا ہے مجھے، اپنے بچوں کو عزادار بنانا ہے مجھے، تاکہ اس نسل میں بھی تازیہ داری رہے، ہم رہے یا نہ رہے، یہ عزاداری رہے ہے، شمع سے شمع جلے، ہے سلسلہ جاری رہے، ہم رہے شمع سے شمع جلے، ہے سلسلہ نہیں، ہے چادریں سر پہ نہیں، ساتھ علمدار نہیں، چادریں سر پہ نہیں، ساتھ علمدار نہیں، ہے چادریں سر پہ نہیں، نہیں، ہے چادریں سر پہ نہیں، نہیں، دیس بیگانہ یہاں کوئی مددگار نہیں، ہے چادریں سر پہ نہیں، نہیں، ہے چادریں سر پہ نہیں، ساتھ علمدار نہیں، ہے چادریں سر پہ نہیں، ساتھ علمدار نہیں، ہے چادریں سر پہ نہیں، ساتھ علمدار نہیں، چادریں سر پہ نہیں، ساتھ بلند آواز میں ماشاءاللہ، ہے دیس بیگانہ یہاں کوئی مددگار نہیں، چادریں سر نہیں، ہے شامیوں شرم کرو، دور ہٹو پردہ کرو، شامیوں شرم کرو، دور ہٹو پردہ کرو، زہرا ثانی ہے کبھی آئیے بازار نہیں، ہے زہرا ثانی ہے کبھی آئیے بازار نہیں، چادریں سر پہ نہیں، ساتھ علمدار نہیں، مل کے نام مولا، چادریں سر پہ نہیں، ساتھ علمدار نہیں، ہے چادریں سر پہ نہیں، ساتھ نہیں، عیش مر ظلم نہ کر روکے تو فضا نے کہا، عیش مر ظلم نہ کر روکے تو فضا نے کہا، تازیانے کے قابل عابد بیمار نہیں، ہے تازیانے کے قابل عابد بیمار نہیں ہے، چادر سر پہ نہیں ساتھ ہے، چادر سر پہ نہیں، عیش مر ظلم نہ کر روکے تو فضا نے کہا، عیش مر ظلم نہ کر روکے تو فضا نے کہا، اور تازیانے کے قابل عابد بیمار نہیں، عیش مر ظلم نہ کر روکے تو فضا نے کہا، عیش مر ظلم نہ کر روکے تو فضا نے کہا، تازیانے کے قابل عابد بیمار نہیں ہے، تازیانے کے قابل عابد بیمار نہیں ہے، چادر سر جیو ماتمی ساتھ علمدار نہیں، مل کے پڑھے ماشاءاللہ، چادر سر پہ نہیں ساتھ، اے مسلمانوں مجھے چند ردائیں دے دو، اے مسلمانوں مجھے چند ردائیں دے دو، اور مانگتا اس کے سوا کچھ بھی یہ بیمار نہیں، اے مسلمانوں مجھے چند ردائیں دے دو، اے مسلمانوں مجھے چند ردائیں دے دو، مانگتا اس کے سوا کچھ بھی یہ بیمار نہیں ہے، چادر سر پہ نہیں ساتھ علمدار نہیں، چادر سر پہ نہیں ساتھ علمدار نہیں ہے، چادر سر پہ علمدار نہیں، چادر سر پہ نہیں دار نہیں، کیویں دربار گئی بیردہ بنت علی، جیڑی نازاں دی پلی، جیڑی نازاں دی پلی، ہائے کیویں دربار مل کے بیردہ بنت علی، جیڑی نازاں دی پلی، ہائے جیڑی نازاں دی پلی، ہائے پاکے ہتھ کڑیاں جدا شام دے بازار آئی، دادی مجبور تے بے چین سی زہرا جائی، آنکھیں سجاد پھپی بھیڑ بازار بڑی، تو اے نازاں دی پلی، تو اے نازاں دی پلی، ہائے کیویں دربار گئی بیردہ بنت علی، جیڑی نازاں دی پلی، ہائے جیڑی دی پلی، ہائے کیویں دربار گئی بیردہ نازاں دی پلی، جیڑی نازاں دی پلی، ہائے جے کو فرمایا نبی پاک نے دل دا ٹکڑا، جے کو فرمایا نبی پاک نے دل دا ٹکڑا، ہائے افسوس میری سین کو حق نہ ملیا، او جدا خالی ولی قبر بابے دی ہلی ہائے نازاں دی پلی ہائے نازاں دی پلی ہائے کیویں دربار گئی بیردا الوداع مصرع پیش کرو ماتمی نازاں دی پلی جیڑی نا دی پلی ہائے چادرہ لٹیا تے خیمے بھی جلائے لوکاں ہائے چادرہ لٹیا تے خیمے بھی جلائے لوکاں فاطمہ جایا کو بازار بکھائے لوکاں شہر تے شہر پھری رل گئی آل نبی جیڑی نازاں دی پلی ہائے جیڑی نازاں دی پلی ہائے کیویں دربار گئی بیردا بنت علی دی پلی جیڑی نازاں ہے وہ عابد بیمار تھا وہ عابد بیمار تھا چلنے سے جو لاچار تھا چلنے سے جو لاچار تھا اور شام کا بازار تھا اور شام کا بازار تھا اور مصطفیٰ کی بیٹیاں مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین بر محمد و آل محمد بلند تر صلوات.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولله الحمد. الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا